Buck Rogers. Origin. Buck Rogers was born in the late 1800s and participated in the First World War upon growing up. However, after the end of the war, he joined the American Radioactive Gas Corporation. On reaching the mine, it unfortunately caved in, but Rogers didn't die. Instead, the gas put him in a state of coma. Rogers woke up almost 500 years later in 2419 AD, when America was in the midst of another world war.
Produces suspended animation.
Suspended animation? Well, that's a lot of hokum, isn't it? Like,
Philip Francis Nowlan created Buck Rogers, and the character was first featured in 1928 in a pulp magazine called Amazing Stories. Rogers made his way into comic strips, movies, radio and television, and became a part of America's pop culture. When Buck Rogers made his entry, he zoomed past the cowboys, who were the contemporary heroes of the youngsters of America. All of a sudden, the American youth became fascinated with spaceships and cool ray guns. And although cowboy heroes remained in the scene for a few more decades, Buck Rogers and his subsequent imitators like Flash Gordon gave the cowboys a hard time. Eventually, the heroes from beyond the stars won the battle of popular dominance, and soon cowboy heroes became a thing of the past. However, we also got to see an amalgamation of these two very different kinds of heroes in content such as Toy Story and Buzz Lightyear. Furthermore, Buck Rogers served as a potent inspiration to George Lucas and his epic work Star Wars. He was so inspired by Buck Rogers' imitator Flash Gordon that Lucas tried to secure the rights to Flash Gordon before he made Star Wars. Many stylistic elements such as Star Wars posters, the femme fatale Leila, the visuals and the dogfighting spaceships breathe in the aura of Buck Rogers' pulp stories. In this video, we will take a deep look at the origin, adventures and journey of this eponymous spaceman called Buck Rogers.
Before we go into our list, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin.
Gravity belts, we may be able to.
Police patrols and loyal citizens are ordered to be on the lookout for 3 fugitives. 2 of them are spies from the hidden city.
1. Buck Rogers started out as a newspaper comic strip radio series. In the original story, the spaceman protagonist Buck Rogers was a pilot of the American Air Force. However, he went into a deep slumber for 5 centuries and woke up to discover that Mongol forces had taken over his country. America was left in ruins, and Buck wouldn't have it anymore. He collaborated with others like Wilmer Deering and his mentor and scientist named Dr. Hua. Together, they would successfully defeat the Mongol invaders and free America. Buck and Wilmer would also get a sidekick in, a former Martian space pirate named Black Barney. As for their enemies, the Tiger Men of Mars, Ardala Valma, and Killer Kane would serve as recurring villains. It was Philip Francis Nowlan who created the character of Buck Rogers in his novella titled Armageddon 2419 AD. The pulp magazine Amazing Stories published him for the first time in 1928, and a year later, Buck Rogers appeared in a syndicated comic strip. By 1932, there were radio adaptations of Buck Rogers and the related stories. Buck became so popular and lucrative that several other newspaper syndicates created their own superheroes and science fiction strips. For instance, King Features Syndicate brought out Flash Gordon in 1934, and United Feature Syndicate brought out John Carter of Mars in 1941. So Buck Rogers was the pioneer who made space opera a household concept. Space exploration as a source of entertainment came to be loved by the young and old alike. Chronologically speaking, Buck Rogers travelled to outer space for the first time on January 22, 1930, in the story titled Tiger Men from Mars. This coincided with the real-world development in the field of space technology when Americans started to explore the outer space. Having said that, the strips used old-fashioned and rudimentary methods of printing despite being based on high-end and ultra-modern futuristic technology. They were mostly printed on Strathmore paper using India ink, while a few strips were hand-coloured and hand-drawn. Although Buck Rogers was one of the first progenitors of many superheroes and space operas, he lived a relatively short life. By 1958, artists were quitting due to the acrimonious relationship between the artists and syndicates. Naturally, the final original comic strip was published in the year 1967. In total, he appeared in 28 newspapers. More than a decade later, the New York Times syndicate revived him in 1979. As far as radio is considered, Buck Rogers' stories were the first sci-fi radio program, airing as early as 1932. 2. Comic books. Interestingly enough, comic books before 1933 were not the comic books as we know them today. Prior to 1933, if an artist wished to get into the business, they had to print their work in newspapers. However, the Eastern Color Printing Company's sale manager Harry I. Wildenberg and salesperson Maxwell Gaines realized that colored pages of comic strips were bringing in more sales of the newspapers. They could be used to advertise and promote other products. According to rumours, Wildenberg realised that one sheet of a newspaper could be cut into 16 pages. So he contacted McNaught and McClure Syndicate for permission to print their popular strips and release them as comic books. They also contacted P&G with the proposal that consumers would clip coupons of P&G products and mail them to their office in exchange for comic books in the mail. The idea became a success, and comic books were born. Soon, Buck Rogers comic strips were assembled and reprinted in this novel format. Dynamite Entertainment published Buck Rogers comics in 2009. 5 years later, in 2014, Hermes Press produced Howard Chaykin's Buck Rogers Volume 1, Grievous Angels.
Seeking an alliance with you people of Saturn.
And why do you desire such an alliance?
To escape the tyranny of a man called...
3. Buck Rogers' origin explained. Buck Rogers made his first appearance as Anthony Rogers, but Philip Francis Nowlan soon changed the name to William Rogers and gave him the monosyllabic nickname of Buck. It was easy to remember and reminded the contemporary folk that their new sci-fi hero was in a way similar to the then famous Western movie star Buck Jones. Anyway, according to the first story titled Armageddon 2419 AD, Rogers was born in 1898 and fought in the First World War. After the war ended, he took up work at the American Radioactive Gas Corporation. While investigating an unusual phenomenon in the coal mines near Pennsylvania's Wyoming Valley, he got trapped inside because of a cave-in in the deeper parts of the mine. He then gets exposed to a strange gas, and, as the comic explained, he goes into a state of suspended animation, free from the ravages of catabolic processes and without any apparent effect on physical or mental faculties. Following this event, Rogers remained in a state of suspended animation for almost 5 centuries, only to wake up in the year 2419. Rogers initially thought that he had been asleep for just a few hours, but when he explored his vicinity, he discovered that things had changed drastically. He then goes on to save a woman called Wilma Deering from goons in strange clothing. Wilma then takes him to her camp, where he meets others from her group. He soon learns that America has been taken over by Mongol invaders called the Hans. He then decides to side with Wilma and her clan to help them remove the Mongol threat.
In charge of a new air force to be organized from the remnants of Kane's flying service.
That's a big order, sir.
4. Live-action adaptations. Buck Rogers movie serial 1939. The serial follows more or less the same story as the comic strip, albeit with a few key differences. In the story, Lieutenant Buck Rogers, played by Buster Crabbe, and Buddy Wade get caught in a severe storm while flying in the North Pole. An immediate rescue was not feasible, so as a last resort, they were asked to release the Nirvana gas, which put them in a suspended animation. However, in that state of suspended animation, they get buried under ice due to an avalanche and are found only after 500 years. By now, the world has been taken over by a ruthless dictator named Killer Kane. However, Killer Kane is opposed by a benevolent scientist named Dr. Hewer and his military man Air Marshal Craig. Soon, Buck and Buddy volunteer to help Hewer's cause and join the resistance. They work alongside another member of the resistance, Wilma Deering. The show featured the Olympic gold medalist Buster Crabbe in the titular role. He had also previously starred as Flash Gordon for one of Universal's serials.
Getting us out of this jam, buddy?
Oh, not me, Buck. Think of all the gold braid I have to polish.
Buck Rogers, 1950 through 1951. This was the first series to air on television, and only one episode from the series survives today. Because of its minuscule budget, most of the series takes place in a secret lab. This became one of the most striking contributing factors behind its low popularity. Although the show remained true to Nowlan's work, it didn't have much to offer. Furthermore, 3 different actors played the titular character, and 2 actresses played Wilma Deering, but, as fate would have it, Buck Rogers was beaten left, right and centre by his imitator, Flash Gordon. Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Film, 1979. The story starts in 1987 with Buck Rogers flying a spacecraft. Nevertheless, he gets caught in an inexplicable space phenomenon that lies frozen for more than 500 years. He wakes up in the year 2491.
In the year 1987.
Are you telling me
That the man may be 500 years old.
When his spacecraft is found by an alien flagship named Draconia. This ship was on its way to Earth because Princess Ardella and her human commander Kane were supposed to attend a trade conference. The 2 of them revive Rogers from his long slumber.
We're not on Earth?
And it seems that Ardella is romantically attracted to Buck. However, Kane sends Buck back to his ship so that he can return to Earth. Buck leaves for Earth. And Colonel Wilma Deering of Earth's military escorts him through the defense shield. It turns out that the Draconians were planning to invade Earth by having human ships attacked mid-space by pirates. They expected the inhabitants of the Earth to seek help from Draconians and open their defenses to them. Buck learns that in the years that he was gone, the world had fallen victim to a nuclear holocaust. Only the city of New Chicago remained populated. The rest of the planet had become a post-apocalyptic desolate land. On Earth, Buck also meets Dr. Hewer, who leads Earth's defenses. Buck smells something fishy and finds out that his suspicions about the intentions of Draconians were not for nothing.
20 seconds to attack.
Buck Rogers in the 25th Century TV series. The feature film was initially supposed to serve as a pilot to the series, but they gave it a theatrical release instead. Naturally, the series follows a plot similar to the film. Developed by Leslie Stevens and Glenn A. Larson, the show went on between 1979 and 1981 and had 32 episodes. It had a few changes from the film, like the removal of words like shit and ballsy so that the show could be apt for all audiences. Since it was a science fiction space opera, even children would have been interested in watching it. Unsurprisingly, the tone of the series was kept relatively lighter than that of the film. Interestingly enough, the opening title sequences of the show included footage from the launch of missions like Apollo 6 and Apollo 4. Furthermore, to portray the futuristic buildings of the 25th century, they used the footage of British and French pavilions from Expo 67. Apart from these, there were other live-action adaptations based on Buck Rogers. In 1953, Goodwill Pictures turned the Buck Rogers serial into a full-length feature film and titled it Planet Outlaws. Once again, in 1966, the recut version was released as a television film titled Destination Saturn, and yet again in 1977 they released a third feature film with the title Buck Rogers. Regrettably, this was nothing more than edited footage.
The ship is ready to blow.
Future of the franchise. From what we know, the Dill Family Trust are the current owners of the right to the character of Buck Rogers. However, others claim that the rights have outlived copyright protection and moved into the public domain. Later, Don Murphy filed a suit against the family lawyers of the Dill Family Trust because they planned to claim the rights of a film that Don Murphy had planned to make based on Armageddon 2419 AD. However, in 2017, the Dill Family Trust filed a suit for bankruptcy relief. The court dismissed the case on the grounds that the Dill Family Trust had abused legal procedures, ignored court directives, and mishandled IPR rights, etc. According to the latest news, the case was settled out of court in 2020. In December 2020, there was news about the development of a new Buck Rogers TV series. In January 2021, Smokehouse Pictures revealed that the series would star George Clooney. As it turns out, he is a co-founder of Smokehouse Pictures. So George Clooney would be heading out to space once again after the 2013 film Gravity with the new Buck Rogers Sci-Fi series. Furthermore, Clooney would be an executive producer to the series. Flint Dill, the grandson of Buck Rogers' original publisher, John F. Dill, is also involved with the series.
This is all the time we had for today's episode. We hope you guys liked it. It would be awesome if you guys can take some time to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us which topic you want us to cover in the comment section. Have a fantastic day ahead and stay safe.
Sensors tell me that this man is good.